¿Me escuchan?
Can you hear me?
Muy buenas tardes a todas y
Good
todos. Mi nombre es
afternoon,
Pamela
everyone.
Castillo.
My
Soy
name is
la
Pamela
auxiliar
Castillo,
ejecutiva de
Executive
UN-GGIM
Secretary
Américas.
of
Estoy en Italia
UN-GGIM
y me
Americas.
acompaña
I
nuestro
warmly
primer
welcome
conversatorio
you to our
virtual
first virtual
titulado
roundtable
Conversemos sobre el trabajo
titled
integrado en
Let's Talk
geografía
about the
geoespacial,
Integrated
centrado en
Geospatial
la guía
Information
estratégica
Framework,
1,
focusing on
Gobernanza e
Strategic
Instituciones.
Pathway 1,
Este evento forma
Governance and
parte de una serie de
Institution. This event
conversatorios que
is part
abordarán
of a
cada
series of
una de las guías
roundtables that will
estratégicas
address each
organizados
of the
por
strategic
UN-GGIM Américas
pathways
en el
organized by
marco de las actividades
UN-GGIM
del
Americas
trabajo
within
regional
the
para
framework of
América
the activities
Pacífico,
of the Regional
liderado por
Working Group
Panamá
for
y
the
Chile. Quiero
UN-IGIF,
agradecer
led
a
by
los colegas
Panama
de
and
las
Chile.
Américas y otras
I want to
regiones que
thank
nos
the colleagues from
acompañan
the
hoy y
Americas and
también a
other
nuestros
regions
delegados
joining us
panelistas que
today, and
compartirán su
also our
conocimiento y
distinguished panelists who will share
experiencia
their
con
knowledge
nosotros.
and
A
experience
nuestros
with
colegas que
us.
están conectados también
To our
agradecerles la
colleagues that are
participación del día
online,
de
we would like
hoy
to
y pueden
thank the
interactuar con
participation
nosotros
for
a través del
today,
chat.
and you can
Para
interact
dar
with us
inicio a este
through chat.
conversatorio,
To
doy
kick
el
off
paso a
this
Sofía Nilo
roundtable, I invite
Crisóstomo,
Sofia
presidenta
Nilo
de UN-GGIM
Crisostomo,
Américas, quien
President
nos
of
brindará unas palabras de
UN-GGIM
bienvenida.
Americas, who will give
Adelante,
us
Sofía.
some welcoming remarks. Please, Sofia.
Gracias, Pamela.
Thank you, Pamela.
Eh, Buenos días
Good
a
morning,
todos y todas. Buenas tardes
everyone.
a todos y
Good
todas.
afternoon as well.
Quería darles la bienvenida
I
a
wanted to
este primer
welcome you
webinar,
to this first
como mencionaba
webinar,
Pamela, en
as
el
Pamela
marco
said, in the
del
framework of
UN-IGIF
UN-IGIF,
como parte de las
and as
actividades
part of the
planificadas por
activities
el grupo de
planned
trabajo
for the
del
work group of
UN-IGIF en las
UN-IGIF
Américas.
America,
Ahí quiero agradecer también
I would also
especialmente
like to
a las
thank
coordinadoras
especially
Catalina
to the
Tapia y Isis
coordinators
Tejada
Catalina
de
Tapia,
Panamá y de
Isis
Chile,
Tejada
quienes
from Panama and
han
Chile,
programado,
who have
coordinado y
organized,
organizado en conjunto con
coordinated,
Pamela
and
Castillo,
along
como
with
secretaria
Pamela
ejecutiva,
Castillo, our
este webinar que esperamos
executive
que
secretary,
aborda la
this panel.
primera vía estratégica
And
de
we hope that it
gobernanza e
sets the first
institucionalidad,
strategic view of governance and
que es muy
institutions,
importante para
which is
avanzar y
very
para dar
important
un
to move
punto
forward
basal de
and set the
avanzar
base
en
point
este marco integrado de
in this
información
integrated
geoespacial
framework
que
of
nos interesa
geospatial
se
information
consolide
that
y
we are
avance
interested to
dentro de nuestros
consolidate and move
países de las
forward
Américas
within our countries
para promover y
to promote
fortalecer y
and
consolidar,
strengthen and
¿cierto?,
consolidate
la adecuada gestión de la
the
información
proper
geoespacial en cada
management of
uno de nuestros
geospatial
países.
information in each of our
Para
countries.
eso también quiero agradecer
For that, I also
a
want
los
to thank
estimados oradores que van a participar
the
hoy día en este
distinguished
webinar.
panelists that we have in
Quiero
this
agradecer
webinar. I would
también
like to thank
a los países
the
participantes
countries that are
y
participating in it.
sobre todo quiero
And above all,
convidarlos
I would like to
y un
invite
poco
you
pedirles también
and ask
que
you
el compromiso de cada uno de nuestros
the
países en
commitment
este
of each of
trabajo
the
tiene que
countries in
ser
this work that
colaborativo
needs to be collaborative
coordinado dentro de la región
and
para que
conjoined within
avancemos todos
the
juntos y no
region so that
echemos
we
hacia
all
atrás.
move forward without leaving
Esa mi
anyone
presentación
behind.
y dejo el pase a
I
los
will give the invitation and
oradores que
I
van a
set the
hacer la
floor
parte
give
importante
the
de este
floor to
webinar.
the
Gracias.
panelists that will be so
Muchas
important for this
gracias,
webinar.
Sofía.
Thank you
A
very much to
continuación, tenemos el
Sophia.
honor de contar con
Next, we are
Deidre
honored to
Dalpiaz
have
Bischoff,
Deidre Dalpiaz
copresidenta del
Bischoff,
Grupo de Alto Nivel
co-chair
del
of the
Marco Integrado
high-level
de
group
Información
of the
Geoespacial de las
Integrated
Naciones
Geospatial
Unidas, quien nos
Information
ofrecerá una
Framework
introducción
of the
sobre la
United
Guía Estratégica
Nations, who
1,
will provide an
Gobernanza e
introduction on
Instituciones.
Strategic Pathway 1,
Adelante,
Governance and
Deidre, te
Institution.
agradecemos
Please,
profundamente por
Deidre,
acompañarnos
we
en este
deeply appreciate
conversatorio el
your
día de hoy. Muchas
participation in
gracias.
this roundtable.
Thank you, Pamela and Sophia, and greetings, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm just going to share my screen. Please give me a moment. And Pamela, is everything coming through okay?
Sí, Deidre. Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you for the invitation to be part of this series of conversations about the United Nations Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, the UN-IGIF. The UN-IGIF framework focuses on bringing together governance, technology, and people in a way that promotes the sound management of geospatial information and encourages its use in solving the global challenges that we face today, like climate change, natural disasters, digital equity, and health security. As you see here, the UN-IGIF includes 9 strategic pathways for a better future. We're all becoming very familiar with this diagram. Part 2 of the UN-IGIF, the Implementation Guide, outlines the 9 strategic pathways in detail. It describes the actions that can be taken to build and strengthen national geospatial information management for both developing countries as well as countries that have already successfully implemented spatial data infrastructure capabilities. Today, we're going to focus on the first strategic pathway, governance and institutions. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Strategic Pathway 1 addresses governance and institutions. Common to all governance and institutional arrangements are 4 key elements that are required to build a cooperative data sharing environment and an appreciation of the value of geospatial information for decision making. This strategic pathway establishes the leadership, governance model, institutional arrangements, and a clear value proposition to strengthen multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral participation in and commitment to achieving an integrated geospatial information framework. The objective of this specific pathway is to attain political endorsement, strengthen institutional mandates, and build a cooperative data sharing environment. Through a shared vision and understanding of the value of the integrated geospatial information framework and the roles and responsibilities needed to attain its vision, success is more likely. Let's now talk about each of the elements included in this pathway.
Sorry, Deidre?
Yes, I see. I'm sorry. Lo siento.
Share button below?
Yes. Yes. Is that better? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Better. Thank you, Pamela. Okay. Great. Okay. So let's first talk about the governance model. The governance model is designed to bring national and municipal agencies together to share geospatial information. It's the operating structure that defines geospatial information management roles and responsibilities and the way they're assigned, coordinated, managed, and monitored within and across institutions. The governance model provides the policies, guidelines, and measures to effectively collect, manage, share, curate, and leverage geospatial information. Many of us are doing this today. It also describes the interrelated relationships, partnerships, and operational dynamics that influence the management of geospatial information across all levels of government, whether that be local, regional, or national. The governance model is essential to achieving government objectives, to driving improvement and maintaining a legal and ethical standing in the eyes of our stakeholders, partners, regulators, and the broader community. For this reason, the model adopted should meet key accountability and outcome provisions of individual government departments, as well as balance the need for effective collaboration across institutions. Second, leadership. Leadership requires vision. It drives change and is realized through the implementation of a national geospatial information strategy, which answers the question, where are we going? Combined, strong leaders and a national strategy paint a vision of a future where the implementation of the UN-IGIF is realizing significant national social, economic, and environmental benefits. Having this vision builds momentum among our stakeholders and partners to take action and achieve results. A champion or a strong leader in government makes the case that geospatial information is essential to the workings of government and is typically identified to actively lead, engage, and promote the strengthening of geospatial information management across government organizations, as well as with industry, the private sector, academia, and the local community. Third, value proposition. The geospatial information value proposition is key to achieving political support. There are many benefits that geospatial information delivers to support the mandates, priorities, and responsibilities of government, the benefits of which are ultimately realized by the community. However, the value proposition, understanding the costs, whether they be economic, social, and environmental, and the benefits to the community, this is not always clear. The value proposition is part of the geospatial strategy. It's a statement of what makes geospatial information important and necessary to the responsibilities and activities of government. Understanding and communicating the value proposition in a country's specific context is key to achieving political and management buy-in, financial support, human resources, and sustainability. Fourth and finally, institutional arrangements. Institutional arrangements establish the organizational, legal, and productive foundations for effective geospatial information management. They're the formal and informal cooperation structures that support and link public and private institutions and/or organizations to fulfill their mandate. Appropriate institutional arrangements are included in the roles and responsibilities of the organizations involved in geospatial information, from the identification of data sources to the dissemination of outputs or products. They also provide the operating relationship between organizations, producers, administrators, and users of geographic and geospatial information. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide background information about the UN-IGIF and Strategic Pathway 1, Governance and Institutions. There's a great lineup of presenters today willing to share their experiences with this pathway. I encourage you to think about the governance model, leadership, the value proposition, and institutional arrangements as the speakers share their information today. Think about your country, where you are now, and what components of this specific pathway will benefit you as you work to strengthen geospatial information management in your country and throughout our region. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Deidre. Te agradecemos nuevamente por la valiosa introducción que nos has hecho de la vía estratégica número 1. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. A continuación, dejo con ustedes a Claudio Sterner, jefe de Relaciones Institucionales de Geociencias del Instituto Brasileño de Geografía y Estadísticas, IPGE, y copresidente del Grupo de Expertos de las Naciones Unidas sobre la Integración de Información Estadística y Geoespacial. Claudio nos hablará sobre la implementación de la vía estratégica 1, gobernanza e instituciones, y compartirá el caso de éxito
number
de
1 and
Brasil.
will share
Gracias, Claudio, por
Brazil's
compartir la experiencia de
success
tu país.
case.
Adelante,
Thank
por
you,
favor.
for sharing the experience of your country.
Thank you very much for this invitation to speak today with all of you. I will try to share the experience of Brazil in terms of implementation of the IGIF. That's it. I will share my screen. Just a second, please. Check. So, what's the model can you use in Brazil to promote a better governance in terms of geospatial information? We have these 4 elements of the this pathway of the UN-IGIF, and I try to speak about all of this in my presentations. My presentation is organized with this structure. First, I will talk about building a culture of governance for geospatial information. Then about the National Commission of Cartography, then about the National Spatial Data Infrastructure, some challenge that you have, next steps in consideration, and some resources that I can share with all of you. Thinking about the culture of geospatial information, of the governance in geospatial information, I think that the history of each culture is very important when thinking how can you promote the governance, a better governance in geospatial information. In case of Brazil, IBG was created in 1936, almost 90 years ago, and there is a strong recognition of our society that the IBG is the leader of the the geospatial information governance in Brazil. That's very good. That's very nice starting pointing when you're thinking about the governance. We have also a legal mandate since 1974 as a coordinator of the National Cartographic System. In Brazil, we have also, since 1967, the Cartographic Commission, that is at COCAR now, CONCAR. That's a commission created to promote the governance of the geospatial information production. So we have some traditional, in terms of some culture of collaborative planning in geospatial information. That's a very good starting point when you think in these subjects. Also, we have a legal mandate from the Brazilian Constitution that delegated just to federal level to organize and maintain official statistics, geography, geology, and cartography service. And it's exclusively responsible for the Union through legislation on national statistical system, cartographic and geological system. That's very good to promote better governance. But when you think in governance in geospatial information, you cannot isolate the geospatial information itself. You have to think about the entire environment of governance that our countries has inside the government. So the geospatial part was a pioneer in this sense, because our national spatial data infrastructure was built in 2018. But after this, you had a freedom access of information law that ensure access of all information produced by government to any citizens. We have also the National Open Data Infrastructure in 2012 that set a lot of standards, technologies, procedures, and control mechanisms to do a necessary meet condition for dissemination and sharing data and public information. Ours in open data model. We have also an open data policy in federal government act that promotes the dissemination of data in federal government, including our agents. And also the Data Sharing Governance Act that address the governance regarding the data sharing in federal government. So this scenario, this landscape of information management help a lot the governance of geospatial information itself, and helps to create a culture to share information and to think in information as an important thing to the entire society. The open data plan that all organizations, federal government has to build either each 2 years. It's also an important thing when you think the culture. All the information in Brazil are disponible to the society in the open format and also free of charge. That also helps a lot when you think in governance. Let's talk about the National Commission of Cartography, the CONCAR. This commission was fundamental to build our national spatial data infrastructure. Inside this commission, all the debate about the NSDA was developed. This commission also was fundamental to approve the Brazilian geospatial metadata profile, to approve also the technical specification for structured vector digital geospatial data. And inside this commission, there is a lot of subcommittees, technical subcommittees, and also political subcommittees to thinking the governance in geospatial information. And there is several ministers that are part of the National Commission of the Cartography. This is the Brazil Geospatial metadata profile. That's very important to harmonize all metadata information in the country. The technical specification of vector digital geospatial also it's fundamental to allow that the national spatial data infrastructure works well. And talking about the specific about national spatial data infrastructure, that in Brazil you call it INGI, that was created in 2008 by a federal government act that defines what is geospatial data and the metadata, that defines what's INGI objectives, that define also the responsibilities and roles of bodies and entities of the federal government, that determines the creation of the actual plan for the implementation of INGI, that promotes the use of free software, open norms and standards, and also defines the Brazilian Geospatial Data Directory. And the INGI was fundamental in the last years to promote the standardization of the geoinformation in Brazil, and also to avoid the duplication of efforts in terms of production of geospatial information, and to improve the dissemination of the spatial information and other gains in terms of geospatial information. This is the NSDI action plan for implementing the national spatial data infrastructure that was fully implemented today. And this is the structure of our strategy. First, we have to think about spatial data infrastructure, the concepts, the subjects for the action plan, identify the players and functions of all the players, thinking about the geospatial data and metadata and the standardization of these. Thinking about the Brazilian Geospatial Data Director, that when you put together all the geospatial information in a kind of index. And thinking about the human resource capacity and training, there's a part, this part is very important in our strategy, the capacity building of other government bodies. Thinking about the dissemination, disclosure, and the implementation of this plan that's fully implemented. This is some data about our NSDA. We have nowadays about 90 organizations being part of the NSDA. We have 220 trained organizations and more than 1,000 people that has the enough skill to think and operate in the national spatial data infrastructure. And every year we have a kind of seminar, a kind of symposium about our NSDA. That's the amount of the data that we have in our NSDA, more than 700 metadata published and more than 27,000 published layers. This is an example of the NSDA map viewer. If you can see in this box here, there is a different institutions that you can access this data in the same platform without any problem. The metadata catalog is also very important, because if you don't have good metadata, it's not possible to find the right information. And I'm almost finished my presentation. Let's talk some challenge that we have in governance of geospatial information. First, there is a very large number of players in the production of geospatial information, and this number is growing and growing and growing. It's a big challenge with the increased private sector participation. And when you think in private sector, we have some problems about the property rights issues, because some companies treat the geospatial information as a private asset. That's a big challenge. How can you deal with this? I don't have the answer for this. We also have the increased collaborative information production, and in the case of very specific of Brazil. We are a federation with 3 autonomous levels: the national, states, and also municipalities. So the negotiation process is always very, very intense and very, very, very hard. Next steps that we think to improve our governance and institutions in terms of geospatial information. First, we are working together. The governance of geospatial information, we are not doing alone. We are not doing as a separate thing. We are working together with the governance of the general information. It's the one strategy, one to all kind of information. For sure, you have specific things in geospatial information governance, but that's important in case of Brazil. We work with it sometimes very tacitly, informally. We think you have to increase the number of cooperation agreements with others, geospatial information producers. And you think we have a gap in terms of value proposition to ensure more resources and legitimacy for the geospatial information production. One strategy that we have is to implement the national map of Brazil. There is that's a set of selected themes published by in India and organized by IBGE, curated by IBGE. And these themes will guarantee that's the better information available, that's the most updated information available, and that's one. It's a kind of strategy to improve the governance of national spatial data infrastructure. Also, you needed to produce and implement a second national spatial data infrastructure action plan, because the first one is fully implemented. So we need to go forward. And also we have to reactivate the National Cartography Commission, because the last 3 years, this commission is not operational. And probably you needed to broaden the scope of this commission, including all kinds of geospatial information, not only cartography, and rename this for something about geospatial information national commission. And the last, have to we're working in designing a new national system of geoscience, statistics, and data. Is being studied by ABG for the implementation the next year with all kinds of information, as I said before. I think that's it. Here there's some results about what I said. If any of you are interested, all of this unfortunately is in Portuguese, but nowadays it's not so hard to translate using the resource that I have in internet. We have all the reference here just for consultation if anyone are interested in this kind of data. That's it. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias for your attention.
Gracias, Claudio, por tu presentación. Sí, sin duda.
Thank you, Claudio, for your presentation. I feel that Brazil's experience is going to be very valuable for the attendees. So attending some of the questions that the participants have been doing, the information of this conversation will be available on the UN-America's webpage, and we also commit to be able to solve the question that people had.
Una ronda de intervenciones de países: Argentina, Chile,
Start a round of interventions by countries: Argentina, Chile, Panama, Dominican Republic, and Lucia will briefly share their experience with the governance model adopted by their national SDI, focusing on the mechanisms used, as well as successes and challenges faced. We ask the speakers to adjust their interventions to the assigned time of 4 minutes. We will let you know when this is over. We'll start with Marcelo Emery from the Spatial Data Infrastructure of the Argentine Republic, IDERA. Please go ahead.
Hola, Pamela. Bueno, muchas gracias.
Hi, Pamela. Thank you very much First of all, to you, Sophia, and the whole work team to gather us to participate in this instance that is so enriching. Well, I'll try to be as brief as possible. In Argentina, the implementation or the use of the framework of geospatial information is being used by the infrastructure of the geospatial lidera with the goal to strengthen each of their parts. And the way we implement the IGIF is taking this framework as a document of reference that strengthens our work plan. There are some things that we need to take into account to see in what way we implement this, that condition the way that we do it, and they have to do with something that is mostly institutional, and it has to do with the participation of integrated framework of geospatial information has a more voluntary character in which they subscribe to an adhesion, in which they commit to fulfill the recommendations that are established. So this shows the conditions to establish recommendations that are mandatory in a way. However, one of the main advantages that we have in geospatial structure has to do with the history, institutional history, and as reference in management of geospatial information. And this gives us an advantage. And at the moment, telling what the situation is as an institution, it's also interesting to clarify that many of the things that we can comment from IDERA are previous to this decision of implementing the integrated geospatial information framework, and it marks this previous alignment that Argentina has, which is sharing many principles with the integrated geospatial information framework. So this can also be a good experience, how starting from there, we take the framework to strengthen this infrastructure. Quickly, I'll try not to be ahead of time. In the point of view as an institution, Argentina has more than 240 organisms and jurisdictions adhered for the national, provincial, federal councils, universities, non-government institutions, NGOs, and companies as well. So it has a big number of actors in this ecosystem of geospatial information management. Logically, this characteristic makes the need, the establishment of a structure for decision-making, so there is an effective exercise of this organization. And for that, IDERA has taken a governance model that is basically stated in 3 conduction organisms and counselors, which is assembly, which takes part in the different spaces that I mentioned before. Not all of them, but the most important ones. It has a director board with the representation of each of these sectors, an executive secretary in the geospatial management, and it has 8 technical work groups that move forward on specific topics. And here we see an almost exact correspondence between the topics that are handled by Sorry, Marcelo. Yes, you reached your time, but I can give you 1 minute to wrap up. I'm sorry. Okay, what I was saying that there's a correspondence between these 8 work groups and the 9 strategic pathways that have to do with this previous conceptual alignment that is between ADERA. So to wrap up, I want this in regards to the other elements that have to do with this pathway. We are working on this, and in the framework of this context that I was mentioning, the importance is to strengthen the course of action with the model of governance, as I was saying. We are working to define the representation of key participants in the assemblies. We also creating recommendations of institutional arrangements that must be considered by the different actors that take part as a myriad of tools to make the recommendation for information, geospatial information management, and also related to the value proposition. I'm sorry for the time I took from the other presenters, but this is how I can briefly wrap up my presentation. Thank you very much, Marcelo. We know that time is too brief to share all of your experience, but we will have other opportunities in next sessions. Thank you for sharing Argentina's experience. Next, I want to introduce Catalina Tapia from the Geospatial Data Infrastructure Chile, IDE Chile, who will share Chile's experience. Go ahead, please. Thank you, Pamela. Well, in Chile, the infrastructure of geospatial data is created through a supreme decree that establishes us as the coordination institution for the coordination and appropriate use of geospatial information. And it's a framework that allows us to gather and take some actions in the country. The main functions have to do with assessing the implementation and strengthening of the national policies on geospatial information, which is now in development and in the last process of approval, along with the plan of action for its correct implementation, which we've also developed with all of our stakeholders, and it's also aligned with IGIF with its strategic guidelines and their action plans, which will allow to strengthen our governance and include all of our actors in its correct implementation. Also, this system examines interoperability, promotes the dissemination of geospatial information, and we represent internationally the international community on these matters to the country, and there is a superior coordinator in charge of the Council of Ministers of Territorial Information, which is the National Ministerio de Buenos Nacionales, and that established a technical committee of inter-cooperation between ministries. This gathers in the and this executive secretary in charge of an executive secretary, which is the one responsible to operate in the different instances that participate in this big system, and as well to assist to the Council of Ministers of Territorial Information, propose plans and actions to this context, and providing technical assessment in regards to the management of our country, and also gather and preside the technical committee of coordination, and also the regional coordinators that are present in each of the regions of our country, which is the territorial units, one of the biggest ones in Chile, and the other is the coordination itself of these units in their territory through a coordinator that take part of the regional governments in our country. And additionally, we have work groups. We have established different work groups with the goal of coordinating all of the actors and all of the stakeholders, all of the institutions in different matters. For example, binding information to or coordination of purchase of images or such relevant topics as the one related to the streets, and as well to build and standardize and make available certain data that are required by institutions, by the citizenship, and that can also be taken from this technical committee as necessities that come up during these meetings and during these gatherings. And we've also proposed to establish work tables with different relevant actors, for example, universities and the private sector, which are also part of this system, and that also create and map information, and they contribute to this system from their duties. This is where we can detect their necessities and include them, implement these spaces which are so relevant for us. I went over by 30 seconds. Thank you, Catalina, for your intervention. Well, up next, I will give the floor Isis Tejada from the National Geographic Institute of the Dominican Republic. Please go ahead. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I wanted to tell you the experience of Panama in regards of governance. And first of all, letting you know that Panama formed their geospatial information structure from February 2013, and which has as a goal to share the information that institutions produce. And in that sense, the data infrastructure leaves the door open so that they are also part of this structure, the private sector, the institution, and the academics, not only the government. Starting from that year, we created a series of committees, of technical committees integrated by our representatives of each of the state institutions. Currently, IDE participates in 25 organisms from the states, but we are under this process of the formalization of for the participation of other institutions. From that, we take components of work, spatial information, technology, and institutional strengthening. In regards to how we administrate the process of governance in the geospatial information infrastructure, Panama has carried out a really hard work from 2022, in which through a resolution of the National Land Administration Ministry, considering infrastructure and geospatial data, through these resolutions, we were given the faculty to strengthening these tools for the national plan. For this plan, we have taken as reference all of the actors, and in that sense, as I mentioned, they participate not only the government, but also the private sector, the academy, and the investigation centers. In that sense, we've already elaborated a diagnosis of the current situation of the country in regards to the spatial information. We've also developed a small inventory of the information that we have in the sense of the fundamental data that we have, and those in which we have too much information and that it's necessary to start a quick action from that fundamental data.
In the last month, we've been working along with all the interested parts in a series of strategic actions that are going to be part of that national action plan. And that I had to highlight that within the infrastructure of spatial data, we have 5 components that I mentioned before, but however, there we need other strategic areas or lines that are included within the frame of information, which are finance, the education and training in terms of making agreements within organizations in this sense within the action plan that strategies that we're forming that those strategic ways are a priority. At the same time, there are some recommendations on those areas that are weak within the governance process. For example, the creation or formulation of a national policy of spatial information. And in this sense, our partner has been working on those strategic lines that are going to be part of that national policy. Currently, we want to finish this action plan so it will be present for the next work plan for the geographical, and along with the institution that are part. Sorry, Isis, your time is done. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Isis.
Thank you, Isis.
Bueno, le agradecemos a Isis por
Well, we
compartir
thank Isis for sharing her experience, Panama's experience. Right next, I want to leave Xenia Correa from the National Geographical Institute for the Dominican Republic. Please go ahead, Xenia. Thank you, Pamela. Let me use a chronometer because I don't want to. I want to use my timer for measure the time. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, Pamela. Well, we within our governance and institutions program, however, regardless that the creation has been rather new, we have been able to position it as a litter organism in terms of management of spatial information, and that has, you can see in the work that we've been put into highlighting the importance of the data, to the creation of the IGN. It was pretty much unorganized because there was no entity in charge of assuming this role. This leadership also in terms of governance not only has been recognized at a national level, but also a regional level and a global level, as it is shown by our presence in organizations in the region, as like the CEPAL or the UN expert group or the spatial information and geography, what has contributed to involve every day, maybe slowly and timely, maybe a little shy, because of course, before other organisms that have been working on this spatial information for so long, we are a referent. They're a referent for us to keep going and keep strengthening ourselves. In terms regarding this governance and the AJN, now we are of the project that we obtain according to the project that we're implementing into big regions, the southwest and the north. And with this, we bid on institution to consult those products and incorporate it as a supply for the compliance of their public policies compliance. This, of course, is in that download center, and the institute is getting some feedback because there is a lot of information and vectorization of the data and the components of the spatial components that due to our recent creation and maybe the lack of budget, we don't have the means to go inside to do this information and corroborate the information, but we have the support of the local governments and the provinces. In terms of the governances, we have created a scrapbook of the spatial information management in which we highlight that it's the mean to establish its governance, where the institutional responsibilities are established regarding the data, and in the same way, and especially in the institutions area, we have agreements with different state organizations, mayors, etc., and we assess and help them on the visualization of the data and the elaboration establishment of this data. Also, we have the committee of the INA. It's 16 institutions, and in this topic, we still lack that the approval of that data policy, and to create an action plan that carry us into this strengthening the same institution that sometimes is weakened because of the change of administrations of the governments that are not being continuous, but in one way or another it's kind of restrictive for us because it stops us from getting our objectives. I think I've been talking for 4 minutes and 13 seconds, so I think I'm done, Pamela. Thank you, Senia. Well, we appreciate your intervention and the experience that you've been sharing with us from Dominican Republic. To finish and finalize this space, I want to present Avangachan Alexander from Port Instructors, Ministry of Infrastructure, Ports, Transport, Physical Development, and Urban Renewal of Santa Lucia. Please go ahead.
In St. Lucia, we started working on our NSDI development using the IGIF in 2019 with the vision to enable an environment where all stakeholders collaborate to efficiently share, access, and use quality spatial data in innovative ways to support sustainable development. The NSDI Action Plan was the result of several consultancy engagements. Our minister currently serves as the champion of our plan and our NSDI implementation. And it is expected that this plan will be ratified by the Cabinet of Ministers during the month of May 2024. What is being put forward to the Cabinet of Ministers includes the NSDI policy, the NSDI action plan, the terms of reference for the National Spatial Data Infrastructure Unit, the NGCC, the National GIS Coordinating Committee, and the National GIS Technical Committee. The NSDI unit, it will be a new unit staffed with personnel to oversee the implementation of the NSDI. And the NGCC is made up of decision makers that are the permanent secretaries, directors, and managers of the various government agencies and quasi-government agencies and other non-government agencies. The NGTC is made up of the technical practitioners within those agencies. Currently, participation in the NGTC and the NGCC, it's made up of agencies that actively participate in leveraging geospatial data, and their participation is currently voluntary. We expect that ratification of our plan and policy will outline that participation. It will be less voluntary and more mandatory. So even though our institutions like the NGCC and the NGTC have been operating in a voluntary manner, we have been able to have some successes in raising awareness via activities such as a symposium with technical managers from our stakeholder agencies, and an exhibition that was open to the public with a focus on upper form, as in Form 4 and Form 5 secondary school geography students. We have also been able to complete the documents that we previously mentioned for submission to our Cabinet of Ministers for ratification, and we expect them to be handling those documents or in receipt of these documents by May 2024, the coming month. Some of the challenges that we have encountered include bureaucratic delays in the action required for the ratification of the plan. Sometimes that's caused by competing priorities of the personnel involved. And also we have managers who should be participating in decision-making activities of the NGCC, delegating their attendance and participation to junior staff who don't have authority to make decisions. And then you have the technical staff who comprise the NGTC complaining that their supervisors do not incorporate the NSDI-related activities and workloads into their performance appraisals. So we're expecting that the ratification by our Cabinet of Ministers will help us overcome some of these challenges and will lead to greater success and quicker forward motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Gracias, Mark, por compartir la interesante experiencia.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing the interesting experience of Central Asia. We want to thank especially to all the members that were with us today in this conversation. We asked everybody that from different places and regions, we invite you to be paying attention to our website. We're going to let you know our next conversations and next event on new strategic ways. We're glad to enhance the knowledge through the invaluable experience from some countries in the region. We have 4 minutes. I don't know if Sophia wants to close with some words.
Sí, nada, volver a agradecer, creo que
I want to thank everybody again because I think the richness of these conversations is actually to meet each other and to acknowledge each other in the different experiences that we have in our countries and the different realities that we face, and also the coincidence, so many coincidences that we have in all of our countries, not only in the application and implementation of the UN-IGIF, but in everything that frames the management of geospatial information within a country. And I only want to finish this, inviting you all for the next conversations that we're going to be carried out and all the strategic alliance from UN-IGIF, but also inviting you strongly for all the representatives for our countries to involve and collaborate in each of the activities for UN-GGIM Americas that you can take active part in each of us work group, especially this one that had to do with the UN-IGIF. So this invitation, I think, only working together and collaborating all together, each one of us are going to be able to strengthen the self-work in each country. So that would be for closing. I will hope to see you all again as soon as possible. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, everybody, again, especially those who were part of this activity today. I hope that it was very fruitful for you. See each other soon. Thank you, everybody.